We left off the last volume with Luffy landing a massive punch on Wapol, so let's see if Luffy can finish off the evil tyrant today. But before we do, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and join the Discord server down below. And with all that being said, let's jump into One Piece Volume 17, Hero Luck's Cherry Blossoms, featuring chapters 146 to 155. Part 1, Chopper and the Rumble Ball. This will cover chapters 145 to 149. So we have a hefty portion of the volume to cover in this first part, but I want to start off by discussing the characters who were glanced over last time. Specifically through the lens of a revelation made by Wapol as he encounters Luffy and the gang. That revelation being the death of Dalton. So while everything has been going on with Crocodile and Chopper, Vivi, Usopp, and Zoro have been fending off Wapol's goons while also seeking to recover Dalton's body that was lost in the snow after his showdown with Wapol. And thankfully, not only do we discover that Dalton has survived, but the 20 doctors have stepped up to let it be known that they are willing to help cure Dalton. All because of a message left by some quack doctor years ago. And speaking of that quack doctor, let's talk about Chopper. So as many of you can probably guess or know already, Chopper will eventually join our crew. But this opening volume does a lot in the way of creating a clear path for Chopper's eventual inclusion on the crew. The first step is seen as Chopper asks Sanji what it means for Luffy to be a rubber man, and Sanji responds that a rubber man is basically a monster. As we know from the last volume, a monster was the term that Chopper was called his entire life. For him, it signifies rejection and a term denoting someone as an outcast. But hearing this from Sanji, Chopper can recontextualize Luffy calling him a monster earlier in the story. Monster might be a derogatory term for most, but not for Luffy or Sanji. Monster is a term of endearment, and the very thing that makes Luffy a monster is what has led him to cultivating the friendships he has today. We then get to see the extent of Wapol's powers, namely the ability for him to use the items he consumes in battle, such as cannons and cannonballs. And after Luffy lands a nasty hit on him, this includes his crony's chest and Kuromarimo, which results in Kuromarimo standing on the shoulders of chests. Yeah, it's underwhelming, I know. But this is when Wapol changes his focus to that of Dr. Hero Luck's Jolly Roger. He calls it stupid, saying it stands for nothing, and Wapol considers the entire concept to be nothing but a joke. And as he fires a cannon at it, we see Luffy jump on the roof of the castle in order to protect the flag. Luffy yells at Wapol, telling him that he would never be able to understand what the flag stands for. The skull and crossbones are an unbreakable symbol, a symbol of strength, power, resilience, and bravery. And as Luffy returns to the fight from protecting the flag, he not only calls Chopper his friend, but he asks Chopper if he can handle Wapol's goons. And we are finally given the opportunity to see Chopper in action. So, remember a few volumes ago when it was mentioned that Dalton ate a Zoan-type devil fruit? And we find out that this means that he can access 3 different forms in battle, for various different purposes. But not to be outdone, Chopper has invented a device known as a Rumble Ball, which gives him access to 4 additional forms. The downside of this being he only has access to these forms for 3 minutes. Now, what are these forms, you may ask? Let's go through them all very quickly. Limb Boost is a form where Chopper looks like a normal deer and gives him enhanced speed and agility. Weight Boost gives him an increase in power. His normal human deer form, which can be enhanced using his brain point. Jump Boosting, which allows Chopper to jump much higher than he would initially. Guard Boost, which makes Chopper into a giant fluffy ball for defense. And finally, Arm Boost, which gives Chopper a major boost in his arms without taking away from his agility. Chopper also has a radar sense, which allows him to figure out his opponent's weak points. I really like how Chopper is utilized here, and how he is not just a cute mascot character like most series have, especially because Chopper is not meant to be cute or adorable. He is a monster, the very thing everyone his whole life has seen him as, except for Dr. Hero Luck and Dr. Crocodile, and now, Luffy, who called him his friend. And backing up his new friend, Chopper is able to find Chess and Kuromarimo's weak point and defeats them, setting up Luffy to finish off the tyrannical hippopotamus. Part 2, Luffy vs. Wapol. This will cover chapters 150 to 151. We had a very long opening part to the volume, and we will have a long closing part of the volume because, trust me, Oda drops some bombshells in the final part of this volume. But before we get to that point, Luffy needs to find Wapol, who managed to sneak away while Luffy was fanboying over Chopper's transformations, and is now chasing Nami throughout the castle. And honestly, I don't know what is worse for Luffy. The fact that he has to face off with Wapol, or the fact that he ripped Nami's coat and now owes her money plus interest for it. This is when we not only see Wapol show off a very interesting ability, being able to eat himself in order to lose weight, but also attempt to access his weapon room, with the goal of consuming all the weapons inside in order to use them against Luffy. But as he reaches for the key, we find out that a resident cat burglar stole the key while escaping Wapol. And let me just say, I think this serves as a nice reminder that Nami is indeed a cat burglar, a trait of hers that I feel tends to be forgotten, but it is nice that it is highlighted here. And while all of this is going down, we see Vivi, Usopp, Zoro, and an injured Dalton heading towards the castle using one of the rope lifts. And we watch as Dalton essentially tells his fellow countrymen that he is prepared to die in order to kill Wapol and give his country a second chance at leadership through the use of dynamite, the same method used by Hiruluk years earlier. Like Hiruluk said back then, Dalton yearns for Drum to have a heart. And as Dalton gives this moving speech, Vivi listens on as tears swell in her eyes. And as this speech is going down, things begin to look bleak for Luffy, as Wapol has managed to find his royal cannon and is prepared to use it on Luffy. Until he finds that snowbirds have made a home inside the cannon, rendering it useless and allowing Luffy to finish Wapol off with a stellar Gum Gum Bazooka. And as Wapol flies out of Drum, we see the Jolly Roger of Hiruluk flapping in the wind. Drum Island has been freed. Part 3, Chopper joins the crew. This will cover chapters 152 to 155. Okay, so without hesitation, this might be the most insane ending we have seen so far in this series. Oda gives us a new crew member, and the things that surround Chopper joining the crew are not only extremely emotional, but they serve as a perfect bow tie to this amazing arc. But boy howdy does Oda drop some lore bombshells afterwards. I'm so excited to talk through it, so let's start off with Chopper. Fittingly, the townspeople are scared of Chopper, and as he runs away out of fear, in a role reversal to end all the role reversals, Luffy chases after him, not for food this time, but because he wants people to accept Chopper as their friend. And as Nami is cleared of her illness and pays off her medical expenses with the key to the weapons room, our pirate crew is together again. But Luffy is adamant that Chopper needs to join his crew. This is when we see Chopper struggling with the fact that even though he wants to join, he knows that he will never be human. He has antlers and hooves and is a reindeer, something that people will never accept. Luffy, however, responds in a fitting way, by telling Chopper to shut up and come along. This might appear to be a rude gesture by Luffy at first, but I don't think this is the case. Chopper is worried about how his own physical appearance will impact the way others see him and his ability to be effective on the crew. But Luffy doesn't care. Luffy thinks Chopper is cool just the way he is, and that's good enough for Luffy to bring Chopper aboard his crew. And if you need any further convincing, Luffy didn't even know that Chopper was a doctor until after Chopper officially joined his crew. This is when Chopper has a tearful goodbye with Kureha, who laughs at Chopper's desire to go out to sea. This is also not meant to be Kureha bullying or belittling Chopper, but her own way of making sure Chopper is okay and firm in his decision. And after Kureha has a tearful conversation with Dalton about Chopper's departure, we see Kureha give Chopper and Hiruluk a fitting send-off. Now, there are two key pieces of Hiruluk's backstory I left out of the last episode, all because I wanted to discuss them in this scene right here. The first being the person who was cured by the cherry blossoms was none other than Dr. Hiruluk himself. And secondly, Hiruluk gave a speech about death not being when one dies, but rather, death coming when somebody is no longer remembered. And using the key given to her by Nami, Kureha takes all of Hiruluk's work and fires it into the sky with the cannons from the weapons room and covers Drum Island in cherry blossoms. Luffy and Chopper managed to bring about Drum Island's cure by ridding off the country of Wapol, and thanks to the cherry blossoms, the residents of Drum are filled with a sense of optimism for the future, and with the flag flying atop the castle, Hiruluk will never be forgotten. Cherry blossoms are often used to symbolize life and death. Here, not only did we see the death of Hiruluk in the last volume, but the new life established of Drum Kingdom thanks to his life's work, and how he impacted those around him. Cherry blossoms can also represent beauty and violence, such as how the violent tyrannical reign of Wapol was marked with the beautiful showing by Kureha. I mean, the symbolism here is not only beautiful, but it is a touching way to end my favorite arc so far, and also serves as a fitting end-off for Chopper and his new crew as they finally make their way to Alabasta. Now, there isn't a lot to discuss in terms of the big reveals besides just mentioning what they are. First, we learned that Gold Roger is actually Gold D. Roger, and the D in his name marks something Kureha calls the Will of D, or Inherited Will. We have two characters we know of so far that have this letter in their name, that being Luffy and the Pirate King himself. So we'll be sure to look out for more characters with this initial as the story progresses, and make sure to mark them as such going forward. Now you might be wondering how this topic of conversation came up, and that's an excellent thought, as a mysterious man named Ace showed up hunting for Blackbeard and wanted to pass on a message to Luffy that he would be waiting for him in Alabasta. So looks like we will have a new character to meet along with Crocodile once we arrive at Alabasta. And, oh, by the way, we also see Crocodile for the first time in action, along with Mr. 2 and Vivi's dad, Nefertiti Cobra. Man, we don't see much from them yet, but I'm super excited to arrive in Alabasta next time. But that does it for today's episode, so please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and stay tuned for volumes 18 and 19 next week. This has been JT, and I hope you all have a great weekend.